Welcome to the Tom Nelson podcast. My guest today is Maxime Bernier. And Max, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm the leader of the new political national party in Canada, the People's Party of Canada. We are a populist, cloning populist and real conservative values, classical liberal values. We are for the people, working with the people and putting our country first. So we created that party in 2018. And at the last election, we had 5% of the vote. And we can tell you that we are ready for the next election that will be in October 2025 in Canada.
All right. And I'm reading your global warming and environment portion of your platform, and it just looks so great to me. There's so much sanity in there. Can you tell us how you put that one together?
Yes, for me, it is important because, as you know, in schools and in our society in general, there's that fear about climate, climate hysteria. And for me, climate and weather, it's two things that are very different. And they always use, the climate when you look at on TV and they're saying, oh, because of climate change, that is happening or that is happening. So it's not the case. The climate will always change. The climate is always changing. And as a political party, we don't want to put forward socialist policies to fight climate change, because for us, there's nothing to fight. And actually, we are the only national political party in Canada that will withdraw from the Paris Accord. For us, there's no question of imposing a carbon tax or imposing more regulations on businesses or giving subsidies to the green industry. We won't do that. We will save our money in our country to lower taxes to Canadians. And there's no climate crisis. There's no climate emergency. And, CO2 is not a pollutant. CO2 is what I'm emitting right now when I'm speaking with you. It's a gas that is very important for life. So our policy is based on science, real science, I must say, and common sense. So contrary to the Conservative Party of Canada and the Liberal Party of Canada and all these establishment political parties and establishment politicians, they will do everything to fight the climate and impose more taxes, more regulations, and socialist policy on us. We won't do that because we won't sign the Paris Accord. We are, saying to, as you know, in Canada, the environment is a shared jurisdiction with the federal government and the provincial governments. And, if it's so important, we'll let the provincial governments deal with it. But us at the federal level, we don't want to impose anything on Canadians to fight that climate because there's no climate emergency.
So reading through your X feed, it makes me so happy that you seem so clued in specifically on climate, that you're linking to Judith Curry's stuff. You linked to Climate, the movie, which I loved. And Patrick Moore endorsed you, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Patrick is a great scientist and a friend of mine. Actually, when we created the People's Party in Canada in 2018, and he was one of our guest speakers at our event. Patrick, as you know, is one of the co-founders of the Green Movement. And he realized that, there's no such thing as climate emergency. And actually, if the climate is warmer, it's better for life on this planet. So, I like what he's doing. And, he's educating people about that. And it's very difficult for us to have a say in the mainstream media in Canada. They don't want to cover what we have to say because we are not in line with the narrative, the official narrative about climate. But Patrick Moore is one of the scientists who is doing that fight.
So do you see yourself as getting your message across more than on podcasts and through X social media, and rather than trying to go through the legacy media, I guess?
Yes, yes. As you may know, we are canceled with the Canadian mainstream media and the mainstream TV stations and newspapers. But you know, we there's other ways to be able to reach Canadians, and that's why I'm with you today. And that's why I'm doing a lot of podcasts. I'm traveling across the country. I must say that the local media, when I'm traveling, I don't know, in Saint Martin, Canadien, Quebec, or, you know, in Nova Scotia, in a small town, it's always easier for me to have an interview with the local media. They don't have the same agenda as the national mainstream media. So yes, I try to be and speaking with the local media and everything that is on the social media. Actually, I'm looking at what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing in the U.S. As you know, Tom, he is canceled by the mainstream media, and but he is very popular for an independent. He is around 25 to 28% in the polls, but he's doing podcasts and he's doing the big one like Joe Rogan and the smallest one with the same message. And actually, in 2024, that's the way to be in touch with Canadians. And that's why I'm very active on social media. And usually, when I have time, I will do the different podcasts and having a discussion with you guys.
Yeah, you broke through, or you got onto Jordan Peterson's podcast, right? With his huge audience. I think that's great to see that.
Yeah, I was with him at the election in 2021. We did an interview together. And also, I did also another big one in the US. I forgot his name. Anyway, but yes, I'm doing podcasts a lot, American or Canadian, and for me, because as you know, Canadian are also watching and listening to US podcasts.
So I don't know if there's any chance that RFK Jr. can get onto the debate stage and get some publicity in the U.S., but is that something that might happen in Canada, that you could get on a debate stage between now and next year and talk about this stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tom, and you're right that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. right now is fighting to participate in the national debates in the U.S. I hope he will be able to participate. For me, I was able to participate in the national debates at the electoral campaign in 2019. And after that, at the election in 2021, the general election in Canada, they didn't want me, so they created a new rule for the People's Party. They said you need 4% of the vote to be able to participate in the national debates during the electoral campaign. And actually, we had 5% of the vote. So I wouldn't be able to participate in the next debate during the next general election. So for us, that will help us because at least the mainstream media will have to speak about us a day before the debate and during the debate and a day after the debate. So that will give us a good visibility, plus everything on social media. And for me, that will be a real debate. I will answer questions. I will promote our platform, and I'm looking forward for that.
So I'm just looking at your platform again, and it's got great stuff in here like this. I'm going to quote it from there. Climate change alarmism is based on flawed models that have consistently failed at correctly predicting the future. It goes on and on with this great stuff. Do you have hundreds of candidates, local candidates for the People's Party that will say this stuff in public?
Yes, actually, all our candidates will say that in public because it's part of our platform. And contrary to the establishment political parties, we are not doing polling and focus group couple of weeks before an election to know what Canadians want to hear. We are not doing that. We are doing politics by conviction and ideas. And we have always the same platform. What our candidates and myself said in 2019 at our first election, we said the same thing at the last election in 2021, and we will say the same thing at the next election in 2025. So it's always the same platform until we win the battle of ideas. And during an electoral campaign, I must say that in our advertising, we will focus on maybe 5 major issues. You don't have time to speak about everything during a short electoral campaign. And climate change would be part of that. Sure, yes.
One other thing you just tweeted in the last couple of weeks is, I'm going to quote here, Europeans are turning against the destructive policies of mass immigration, climate hysteria, globalism, woke craziness, warmongering, and bureaucratic tyranny. I love that stuff. It seems to be a consistent message across your X feed.
Yes, it is. On Twitter, on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok. I'll be on TikTok maybe in a couple of weeks. We are working on that right now. And that's the same message. I try to be very present on social media. And what I'm saying right now, I said that in 2019. So it's very, we are very coherent with our ideas. It's not because, it was not, it is a little bit more popular, if I may express myself like that, to speak against the climate hysteria these days, but it was not the case in 2019. And that was the same position. It's not because an idea is not that popular today that that idea is not just and true. An idea will become popular if we're speaking about our ideas with passion and conviction. So that's what we are doing. It was not that popular to speak against climate hysteria in 2019. It is a little bit more today. And the more we speak with rational arguments, the more it will become popular. And that's the way to do politics for us. We want to change the Overton window, to move the Overton window to the right. And that's why I'm saying that the Conservative Party in Canada, with Pierre Poilievre, they're only conservative in name. They don't have any courage to speak about, real conservative policies. Pierre Poilievre is a great followers, is following the public opinion, is not leading the public opinion. And us, as a political party, our goal is to lead the political opinion, myself and our candidates, by speaking about our vision for this country based on facts, science, and reason.
Excellent. And do you think that climate hysteria has peaked in Canada? I'm seeing signs that it has peaked in many places. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. Because also of the economic situation, we are in a stagflation and will be in a recession soon in Canada and in America, in Europe also. So when we have inflation and our standard of living is going down with mass immigration and a huge deficit, when our standard of living is going down, that is not the priority of Canadians, to fight something that is not hurting them. So they're ready to look at another alternative. And the other alternative is the People's Party, with our vision on climate, saying, there's no emergency, don't panic. And if the climate is warmer today than it was 10 years ago, that's a good thing. We want that. And CO2 is not a pollutant. It is a real gas for life. So we are speaking like that. And because of the economic situation, like I said, maybe more people are open to that, because if you fight climate change as a politician, you will impose more taxes, more regulations, and all that is adding a cost for Canadians. When you impose regulation on a business, that business will transfer that cost to their consumers by increasing the price of their goods or services. So at the end, it's always a consumer who will pay for that. So people understand that. And right now, they don't have money for that. So they're more open to listen to what we have to say.
Do you agree that in recent years, the elites tried for a great reset, but what they got was a great awakening? As so many people have figured out, they were lied to over and over, and people don't trust the legacy media. They're thinking for themselves on other issues too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's why I had a discussion with Jordan Peterson long time ago, and I told him, do you have any ideas? I have been I'm canceled with the mainstream media, and it's very difficult for me to be in the mainstream media. And Jordan told me, forget it, Maxime, forget it. They are media of the past. And just be active on social media, do what you have to do, and your message will come across. And he's right. So the good news is I'll be able to participate in national debates. I'll be on TV and being able to have a little bit more visibility with the mainstream media. But our strategy is to be more active social media because Canadians understand, like you just said, Tom, people are fed up with the mainstream media. They know that they have an agenda, and more people realize that, when you have censorship like that on social media, it's because, they don't want to hear the truth. And censorship is there. We need to fight that. So people realize that these days, you need to try to find your news not only on mainstream media if you want to have the big portrait. And more Canadians are doing that.
So looking back on the Canadian truckers protests, what do you think the fallout has been years away from it now?
A big success, a big success. And I want to thank the trucker. I want to thank Canadians who were there, freedom fighters. We were able to move the public opinion. And, after that freedom convoy, provincial governments did withdraw their draconian measures. But they were saying it's not because of the protests and the freedom convoy, but it was because of that. And also the truckers gave a lot of a lot of they had a lot of support in Europe and in the US also. They that was a great inspiration for the freedom movement in other countries also. So yeah, we can be proud of what happened, what we did, but we cannot be proud of what the federal government did to us during that freedom convoy. Freezing bank accounts, and they started the violence there. And as you know, now it's public, it's official. Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act illegally. It was unconstitutional. He didn't have any reason to do that. So, and it's sad that that happened in a supposed to be a democratic country. But yes, the legacy of the Freedom Convoy in the history books will be positive.
So even for me, I think the freezing of the bank accounts, that blew my mind that happened. That made me start thinking about the Bitcoin and whatever. Can governments really take your money if they don't agree with your politics? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, they're doing that in a banana republic, not supposed to happen here in Canada, but that did happen. And now Trudeau is pushing more legislation to impose censorship on social media. All these legislations must be repealed, and that's part of our program also.
Okay. Do you want to talk about your real world experience you had before you went into politics? Because for a long time, you were not in politics at all, correct?
Yes, you're right, Tom. I was not, and I'm not a career politician. Actually, contrary to Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre was elected at 25 years old, didn't have a real boss, and he was elected since that time. For me, I did work in the private sector for about 80 years. I was VP of an insurance corporation, VP of a bank, and I had bosses, and I know what it is to work in the private sector. And I decided to jump into politics in 2006 at the election there. And I was elected for the first time. I was elected for 13 years. And in 2018, we created the People's Party of Canada. I left the Conservative Party, And, Stephen Harper was a good manager of a big fat government. And people don't remember, but in 2011, when we had our majority as a conservative government, we had a minority government in 2006, another minority government in 2008, and a majority government with Stephen Harper in 2011. And, Stephen did the biggest deficit of the history of our country at that time. So he was a big spender and he didn't do any reform. And so that's why I believe that Pierre Poilievre may be elected and, Trudeau won't be able to win the next election because of the economic situation. And Poilievre would be able to win. But, he will do like the same thing like Harper was doing with his majority. Harper wanted to be reelected and he was looking at the polls and focus group, and that's why he didn't do any reform. So Poilievre will want to be reelected and he will do the same. So that's why I quit and I said this party, the Conservative Party of Canada, is not conservative anymore. It's only conservative in name, and they're intellectually and morally corrupt because they don't speak about real conservative values. They are afraid of that because right now we are living in a socialist era, and that is not that popular to promote conservative values. So by doing that, they're giving more credibility to the leftist narrative, and that's what they're doing. So we created the People's Party in 2018, and I can tell you, Tom, that was the best political decision that I took at that time. And this party is there for the long run. So we will have a candidate in every riding at the next election in 2025. So that will give the opportunity to every Canadian to be able to vote in line with their values, to be able to vote for what they believe, to be able to vote for the People's Party of Canada. So for us, the future is bright. We just need to be out there and working hard. And up to now, we have about 125 candidates selected and approved, ready if there's an election. But we'll have a full set of candidates before the general election in 2025.
So it makes me happy thinking about this new media thing, in that in preparation for talking to you here, I listened to you speaking a lot on lots of different podcasts. So I feel like I understand your positions. Instead of having the legacy media tell me what you think, I'm able to hear it from you. I'm totally loving that. In one of the podcasts, I think you referred to the UN as dysfunctional and socialist. And you would...
Great.
If you were in charge, you wouldn't pull Canada completely out of the UN, but you would reduce funding, or what would you do?
Yeah, we'll reduce funding and we'll save a lot of money because we will tell to the UN bureaucrats, if you want our support as a country, you need to promote our values. And as you know, the UN is a bureaucratic socialist organization, and we will save a lot of money. First, we will withdraw from the Paris Accord. We will withdraw from the migration compact because we don't believe that everybody can come to Canada. It is a privilege to be Canadian, and we have legislation that must apply. Our immigration policy is very clear. We want to end mass immigration. And you must ask, what is mass immigration? Do we have mass immigration in our country? Yes, we do. When you have the growth of our population last year was 3.2%. If you compare that with the growth of the average growth of the Western countries last year, their population growth was 0.6%. So it is mass immigration, and that is having an impact on our standard of living, housing. We need to stop that. And actually, the growth of our population came by immigrations. We didn't do a lot of babies. And so 97% of the growth of our population is coming from immigration. So that's why we need to stop mass immigration. We need to be sure that people who will come here will share our values. We need to have an interview with them. We need to do a screening. We are not doing that right now. So the UN is promoting migration for everybody. We are promoting the opposite. So that's why we will save a lot of money. And same thing with the 15-minute cities, people must be able to travel and to do what they want. We don't need the UN to tell us what to do. Same thing also with the World Health Organization. Uh, you know, that organization was promoting lockdowns and stay-at-home orders and the jab, and I was promoting, and our party was promoting freedom of choice and with an informed consent. So we don't need the World Health Organization to tell us what to do. So we won't participate, and actually we won't participate also in the pandemic treaty that they are negotiating right now. We need to keep our sovereignty as a country, and we need to take our decision here in Canada for Canadians.
How about this whole globalist war on farmers? It's a war on cow farts, against cow fart-induced bad weather. Are they making any headway in trying to reduce cow herds, et cetera, in Canada over that argument?
I don't know, but they're trying everything. They're trying everything that is nonsense. And, that's why people are very busy and they don't have time to read everything. So I'm seeing my role as the leader of a national political party with our candidates to be out there and to inform people. And I want them to take an informed decision when the time will come to vote for the next election. And that's why everything that is, if it's, people must understand, they must question everything that is coming from the mainstream media. And more people are doing that. So for us, that is telling us that our pool of support is growing. So I'm not telling you that all these people will vote for the People's Party. But when you question the mainstream media and you look for your information, like with your podcast or other podcasts or other social media platform, I believe that you may be a person that has a chance to support the People's Party of Canada.
Yeah, I've heard you talk a lot on other podcasts about just common sense, that this whole idea that you need to fight to prevent CO2 from making it too warm in Canada, the whole thing, that whole idea cannot resonate with people that think for themselves, can it?
It cannot. Absolutely, you're right. And it will not. The time is on our side. All these lies cannot, they're good for a time, but when people are more informed, more educated, and the truth will always prevail. I don't know when, but it will, like it did with COVID-19. Now we know that jab was not safe and effective, and we have all these reports. We were supposed to be, crazy people because we were telling the truth at that time. And now, the time is on our side, and we all know that, the jab was very dangerous for some people, pregnant women and other people, and that was not safe and effective. So the truth would prevail on climate. It's a question of time.
I want to drop back and talk about what was your personal journey towards climate realism? Did you know from the very start that this thing was a scam, or did you read anybody's books in particular, or how did this happen?
Yeah, I had a chance to have a meeting and a good discussion with Patrick Moore a long time ago. And so, I started to speak against that during the leadership contest that I did when I was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada in 2017 and 2018. I was speaking, about that climate hysteria at that time. So it's not new for me. But yes, I try to speak with the right person, listening the right scientist. And when you compare, and I like competition of ideas. And so that's why, I'm not scared that we will win, because we are on the right side of the argument and on the right side of the history. Like, COVID-19 did show to everybody that what we said at that time, that was the truth. And more people realize that. So on climate, it is the same thing. We need to be out there to promote our ideas. And I want, that's why I'm saying to people, just, do some research and find, the other point of view. And after that, you'll be able to decide from yourself what is the best position for the country, for the future of this country. For me, yes, I did that a couple of years ago, and I'm convinced that, what we are seeing in our platform is the platform that is based on science.
I'm going to read one more quote from you. There are so many third rails in Canadian politics that the cowardly establishment parties don't want to touch: immigration, private health care, equalization, climate alarmism, etc. And my question is, do you think a lot of politicians in those other parties, they secretly agree with you, but they think the polls don't support it so that they won't say it publicly?
Maybe, yeah, maybe, Tom, maybe some of them, but not a lot. Privately, they may agree with us and with what we are saying and with the platform of the People's Party of Canada, but they don't have any courage. They don't have any real conviction if they don't want to speak about that, and if they don't want to challenge their own leader on these subjects. Their follower, for me, I don't have any respect for them. If personally you believe that the PPC has the best platform, and you're saying the opposite publicly, and you're staying with a party that is promoting the opposite, for me, you don't have any conviction, and I don't have any respect for that. The huge majority of these establishment politicians are looking at the polls and focus group. And you may say, Maxime, on mass immigration, for example, now more and more people agree with our position. About 50% of them. Why? The conservative and the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre are not speaking against mass immigration. It's because it's not a question only on the population in general and looking at the polls. Oh, there's 50% of the population on that side. I will speak for them. No, you must add another data. The other data is the ridings. They want to win more ridings, and maybe in some ridings, mass immigration is not that popular. And if they speak against mass immigration, they won't have the support of these people living in these ridings. So these polls are more focused on riding by riding. And so that's why the majority of them are doing politics based on polls, based on the number of ridings that they can win. And if, like climate change, we have more people on our side, and that doesn't mean that they will come on our side, because they're looking at the impact of them winning some ridings that are important to be in government.
You have your own podcast, and you had Christine Anderson of Europe on your podcast. I really enjoyed listening to that one. And I have had Malcolm Roberts, who's a climate realist from Australia, and John Ruddick. Yeah. I'm curious, do you have do you stay in contact with other climate realist politicians across the world very much?
Yes, actually I did, actually, I try to be in touch with the one in Europe, and what's happening right now in Europe, it's very encouraging, because populist political parties are winning step by step. And for us, maybe Canada, we are a little bit behind, but we will come there for sure. And I'm having discussion with them. And actually, Eric Kaufman, that is a professor in London, UK, and he wrote a lot of 2 books on immigration, and he will be one of our speakers during our revision convention that we have in Ottawa, August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. That's the conference that we're having with our organization, our candidates, our volunteers. And I can tell you that we'll have good speakers like Eric Kaufman. So yes, it's important to follow what is happening in Europe, because on the midterm, that will have an impact here on Canada. And that's why I'm optimistic about the future of our country and our party.
All right. I've heard you say a lot of interesting things about the whole idea of printing money and inflation being a hidden tax. And they're spending a lot of this money on the climate scam, aren't they?
Oh, they are. Yeah. They are giving a lot of money, subsidies to the green industry, to the electric cars. As you know, in Canada, the federal, provincial, and provincial government gave 50 billion dollars to one corporation to build electric cars and create a new industry. We don't need that. We don't have that money, and we must not force people with their taxes to give that money to a big corporation. And yes, I'm speaking against that. And we want to be sure to balance the budget. And what is happening? Because all that money is going to other corporations and outside the country sometime. But we don't have that money. And what is happening? The Bank of Canada is buying Canadian bonds. And by doing that, they are printing money out of thin air. And when you have more money chasing fewer goods, you have inflation. And that's why we have that inflation right now. And Pierre Poilievre won't solve that, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, because he said it's okay with the Bank of Canada to have a 2% inflation target. 2% inflation is bad, 20% inflation is bad, it must be 0% inflation. Like that, everybody will keep their purchasing power. Pierre Poilievre wants Canadians to be poor with that inflation target with the Bank of Canada, and also with the deficit that it will do. So to control the inflation, we need first to balance the budget, stopping the deficit, and second, to say to the Bank of Canada, no more creation of money out of thin air, 0% inflation target. But Poilievre won't do that, and that's why we will have inflation. Officially, the inflation in Canada is about 3%. That's the official inflation rate. But the real one for Canadians, it's about maybe 6, 8, 9%. But that may be like that for a couple of years because inflation is a tax, like I said, and you just said, and that's a way to pay for these huge deficits. So when people are telling me, Maxime, that would be our kids and grandkids that would pay for all our deficit and our debt, it is not true. We are paying right now with the inflation tax, and yes, our kids and grandkids will pay for it later, but we are paying for it right now with that inflation. So we need to stop that. We need to balance the budget. And by the way, we can do that in 1 year. The deficit in Canada is about $40 billion this year. So if you cut all the subsidies to corporations and green corporations, you can save $10 billion. If you cut the UN, you can save, around $5 to $8 billion. You cut the CBC, you save another $1 billion. I can go on and go on. Look at our program. We will be able to balance the budget in 1 year, but you need to have the courage of your convictions. And first, you need to have conviction. And I doubt that Poilievre has the right convictions to do that. His only conviction is to be prime minister, elected, and being in power. And, that's why I don't trust him. And that's why I believe that Canadians need the People's Party to keep Pierre Poilievre honest, to keep him in the right direction, and to speak about these issues. Because imagine, Tom, if we were not there, nobody in Canada at the level in politics will speak against climate change, mass immigration, and all these crazy woke ideology. So I strongly believe that Canadians need us and we need them. And so that's why I'm confident that the next election will be able to do well.
Excellent. A more specific question is about EVs in Canada in particular seem like a bad idea because it's so cold and the batteries don't perform well in cold weather. And then solar panels north of the 45th parallel are a particularly bad idea. Are both of those still being pushed in Canada or not so much?
They are absolutely, and the federal government is giving a lot of money. Like I said, $50 billion to one corporation to promote, electric cars. So yes, and we will stop that. You know, people, and what is happening right now? So some provincial governments at the provincial level here in Canada are giving subsidies to Canadians to buy electric cars, but they're so expensive. So it is a subsidy. That subsidies is coming from poor Canadians to these rich Canadians for them to be able to buy an electric car. No, we will stop all that. If you want to buy an electric car and it's very expensive, you won't have any subsidy from the federal government. You'll have to pay 100% from your own money in your own pockets. So the government won't participate in that, and that's a fair policy, and that's a policy in line with free market ideas and competition. If they want to sell their electric cars, they just have to be more, a little bit better and cheaper, and maybe people will buy it. But I'm against that idea is that the government must be there to subsidize people to buy these cars.
All right. Any other points you'd like to make before we finish this one up?
Well, I want to thank you, Tom, for that opportunity. And for me, like I said, it's important to be with you, and I hope that I'll be able to be with you before the next election and having a discussion also. But if people want to know more about the People's Party of Canada, they can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. They can read our platform, click on platform. All our policies are there. We have 21 policies based on 4 principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. All our policies are in line with these 4 principles, and we won't change. That's the foundation of the People's Party of Canada. And they can follow me also on Twitter or X, Maxime Bernier, on Instagram, and soon I'll be on TikTok.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. And I just think it's so important that somebody like you has the courage to speak out rationally on these important issues. I think it's great. So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for what you're doing also. I know that you have a great interview with a real expert on climate change on your channel, so that's interesting. I will invite people to go through your channel. I did listen one of your interview yesterday before that podcast. They're very interesting. So thank you also for doing what you're doing, putting the other side of the story out there.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. Maxime Bernier. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.